I'm Paul Dyer. I'm the CEO of Prompt, which is the agency partner for Cetaphil, behind some of the work we're going to talk about here today. And I'm joined today by Tara Loftis, who's the global president of Cetaphil. Tara, do you want to do a little bit of your own introduction?
Sure. So super happy to be here. As Paul said, I'm Tara. I'm the global president of Dermatological skincare at Galderma, where our flagship brand Cetaphil is having an absolutely incredible run right now. We're a legendary skincare brand, but we are re-energizing and reinvigorating our brand and having a lot of fun. Personally, I am a career beauty marketer. I'm obsessed with beauty. I'm obsessed with making people feel as good as they can. I've worked at brands like Too Faced, where I helped build the brand to exponential growth. More recently, I had spent 10 years at LVMH's beauty incubator, Kendo, where I oversaw brands like Fenty Beauty, Ole Henriksen, etc. And while I loved my job, I couldn't resist the opportunity to come to Galderma, where I could reinvigorate a brand like Cetaphil, which, from my perspective, is this brand that everyone has, but it was so functional, and it just needed an injection of cultural momentum and energy. So here we are.
And it's certainly gotten that injection of cultural momentum. It's been about a year and a half now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like pretty much right on.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're going to talk today about the this year's sort of Super Bowl window with Lil Wayne, but that was preceded, of course, by you were 4 weeks into the job when we did Game Time Glow. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was about 2 when we kicked off that brainstorm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, do you want to maybe share a little bit of the behind the scenes in terms of what you were looking to accomplish then in your first month, and then we can talk about how that maybe laid the groundwork for the campaign we're going to talk about today?
Absolutely. So as I said, I think context is important here. So in my history as a marketer, I have been really fortunate enough to be at brands that didn't have big marketing budgets and that have always had advocacy first marketing structure. And so often I was being told, hey, like, if you aren't relevant, you don't exist as a brand, right? When you're at a brand and you don't have media budgets, all you can do is culture jack, essentially. So if there's something happening out in the world and you're not brainstorming and being a part of it, you're not being relevant, and then you don't sell, and then your brand goes away, right? That spiral happens very quickly. And so more recently, having spent many years really winning at Fenty Beauty, and every time the Super Bowl came around, even though we had been really fortunate when Rihanna performed, we were still behind the scenes creating what we would call a viral bet, right? And that should be something that's fairly inexpensive. And it's based on this lens of, hey, we know we're not going to win with media dollars, but we can win with creativity. So that's just the way I think. That's just the way I approach everything. So being 2 weeks into my job at Galderma, I was preparing my nightly to-do list, and I had gotten an alert on my phone from X saying, oh, the teams from the Super Bowl had been announced. And so it's wired in me to be like, okay, so it's go time. So we have to brainstorm. What are we going to do? So are we going to take a side? What kind of content are we going to create? So I just set up a brainstorm. And I had been really fortunate enough to have just met the Libbie Taylor team, which, as I know, is as a lifetime beauty marketer, Libbie Taylor are legends, right? And so I undoubtedly included your team in this brainstorm, and we all came with ideas. But I think, again, it came from a very wholesome place of just wanting to check that box. We just wanted to be a part of the conversation. But what happened was that we hit it out of the park because there was someone on your team that came with a lot of passion and a deck. And we were
Always a deck.
The rest of us had a few names of influencers and things we had seen, and then but there was a guy on your team that came with a deck, and he was like, hey, there's a cultural insight, this is happening, we could do it like this. He had thought through it 360, and as a marketer, what you're doing is an art and a science. And it's the art of it that we have to really become attuned to. And I'm really passionate about that. I'm from California, so I'm a little woo-woo. But I really believe in listening to that instinct when your body says, like, yes. Like, everything in your body is like, you know, this is going to work. And so we had to do it, essentially. And that was 10 days before the Super Bowl. Do you know how crazy that is? But the idea was based on this insight, right? It was indisputable what had been happening with Taylor Swift. What she had done that year is she had brought daughters into their families' living rooms for the first time with real conviction about watching football with their dads because they were hoping to get a glimpse at Taylor. And so the insight that we saw was this, but it was really heartfelt and it was truly emotional. And so while other brands were creating, you know, and this is not to discredit anybody, something like a piece of content with a celebrity, right? For us, the celebrity was a cultural insight that was happening. And we were able to create an insight that made people feel something. And I knew from my time at Kendo that, again, if you win with an idea, you don't need to put media behind it because everyone wants to share it. So that's a challenge to all of us as marketers. If you have an idea that's good enough, you don't need to spend media dollars. I'm sure there's people that work in media that are like, stop talking. But we won with that. And that's why you call it a viral bet. Not every bet will pay off. That did.
Yeah, for those who haven't seen what we were talking about from last year. So a lot of the emphasis in last NFL season was about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. The pivot right before the Super Bowl was this realization that it had brought dads and daughters closer together. And so that was the story that we leaned into. And from the agency side, we have a new client who showed up at Cetaphil 1 month before the Super Bowl. We've been working with this brand for over a decade, trying to push to be more culturally relevant, et cetera. Within 2 weeks, she challenges the team to say, let's try and win the Super Bowl. And we're kind of like, okay, here's another client that thinks, you know, like, we'll see, you know, if she actually bites. So we put this idea together. We came in and we said, we're going to lean into dads and daughters, sensitive storyline. And, you know, we'll put this piece of content out and we'll try and generate what we call network effects, right? Where everybody you know seems to be talking about it. And internally, we were like, she's been there for 2 weeks. There's no way she's going to sign off on this. Let's at least just show her how we think, and maybe next time around, right? She'll know that we can bring this kind of thinking, and she signed in the meeting. And so now the agency is like, oh crap, we got to make this thing. And in 8 days, right? Like write the script, cast, shoot, all the cut downs. We had to produce influencer mailers and get them out to influencers. We had to, like, the whole thing in 8 days. We drop it on a Friday, and it's almost instantly viral, trending nationally. I mean, 6 billion earned impressions. It was the #1 sort of earned storyline of last year's Super Bowl. So that was obviously a little bit of a lightning in a bottle moment. This year, of course, everybody's saying, well, how are you going to beat that? And we started having that conversation months in advance. But we were pretty closely aligned, I think, from the beginning on this idea of the reason it was so magical is because we waited to the last minute, right? Because we couldn't overthink it. We couldn't do 25 rounds of edits. We had to just go with our gut. We had to do it right at what was trending in that moment. And you're not going to really be able to forecast 6 months earlier what's going to be trending the week of the Super Bowl. And so we kind of, you know, held hands and waited. And what was it, maybe 3 weeks out this time?
Just despite our efforts to start a little earlier, I think, yeah.
And so 3 weeks out, we came back together and said, what's the big storyline? What's the big thing we're going to do? And this year we did decide to lean into a celebrity because there was a highly relevant storyline. Yeah. Do you think we should just show them the video at this point?
I think we should.
Okay, let's do it. All right. So obviously a very different tone, right? The first one was very emotional. The reaction on social media was people were crying to last year's. This year's totally different emotional tone. So you want to talk about that maybe a little bit around how we struck the humor versus sensitive kind of balance there?
Yeah. So I would say, you know, as you said, about 4 to 6 months out from the Super Bowl, we aligned as a team and we asked ourselves, we acknowledged we had lightning in a bottle last year. Do we even want to try? Right? Because that says something. Like if you're going to place a bet again, it means you're going to anniversary these numbers, these sales, et cetera. And so we decided as it got closer, yes, let's do it. So we did a sweep of everything that was happening about a month to a month and a half prior before the Super Bowl. And we knew that timeliness and relevance was everything. And no disrespect to Lil Wayne, right? He was obviously a critical part of this strategy in 2025. But I'm going to say something a little provocative. I think that hiring a celebrity is like a cheap and lazy shortcut for brands to try to win the Super Bowl.
Not cheap, but lazy.
Yes. Cheap in terms of lacking creativity, but definitely not cheap for sure. But I think, what we were doing is we were just sweeping through social listening. What's happening right now? What's going to make people be like, wow, that is so funny and that's so relevant and connected to what they were seeing in the news at that moment, right? All the while full well knowing that our competitors had shot their ads several months before, right? Like, so you can't be relevant in the moment when you can't move at the speed of culture when you're shooting a campaign several months out. So we knew already it was going to be like crunch time again. So we found this headline, right? And we were looking at a few headlines together with your team. But what was so unique is the fact that we had just rebranded Cetaphil. And our tagline was for everyone's sensitive skin. And we were watching something shift in culture at the same time. Gen Z was talking about being sensitive AF. Like, it was a flex. Be emotionally available. Be sensitive. It's okay. And so we were leveraging that, and we thought, how do we keep this storyline going for everyone's sensitive skin? How to amplify this? And this storyline just stood out, right? The fact that Lil Wayne was being so emotionally present and honest and very vulnerable in the news and on his social media channels about how devastating it was for him to not be chosen to perform in his hometown for the Super Bowl. Like, this was his childhood dream. And that was endearing for us, right? And we thought, okay, wait, there's something here. We're sensitive, he's sensitive. So we dialed up his team at UTA, and we said, hey, like, we know he's busy. We know the Super Bowl's in 3 weeks, but if we could give him a platform, would he like to work with us? So I think the element of humor was essential, right? Because we looked at it from Lil Wayne's perspective. He had just been very vulnerable. And so we thought, how do we emerge? We weren't going to invest in a national media buy. We didn't have that budget. And here's Lil Wayne at the same time, who we thought, from our expertise combined, felt like he could poke fun at this a little bit, and he could build even more affinity with his fan base. So we felt like humor was the right way in. And I mean, you could be serious about it, but I think humor in our history also delivers some of the highest natural engagement on social, but it has to be a genuine fit with your DNA. It absolutely has to. So I think we chose the humor route. We mocked up a beautiful pitch and a storyline that we sent to his team at UTA. They set him down, and we got a yes pretty quickly.
I mean, same thing as the year before, right? Everything had to go. That's the other nice thing about being in such a tight timeline, is you really can say to people, you have to say yes today or it's off the table. Right. Like, and so in particular, you think about celebrity negotiations, they always get drawn out, and there's another person who gets involved, and it's like, sorry, this is the production schedule. If you want to do this, it's today or no. And it was today.
Yeah, it was today. But his team wanted this too, right? And so we always think about it. What does the celebrity want? Or what does the talent want out of this, right? And we had a third party involved this year, whereas last year it was just us and this idea without a celebrity.
Yep. And then, of course, being able to connect it to his album dropping, added a ton of top spin, a ton of cultural relevance, but it was also one of the reasons why they didn't really want to miss the window, right? They wanted to be part of the cultural conversation right now because this was going to be the biggest audience they could have to announce his upcoming album. So it all kind of ended up working out really nicely.
Yeah. But I was so proud of that. We did a great job in building this rapport with Vitana Shaw at UTA, his longtime agent, to where he pitched the idea back to us. He said, "Hey, would they ever be game to let me announce my album in their piece of content?" And we were like, "Of course. Yes. We will give you 5 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever you need." And that was so exciting. That unlocked a whole other stream of earned media for us. And we got over $64 million in earned media from this. And a big reason why is because I think for all of us in our respective industries, we know what it's like to get an earned, if you're fortunate, we know what it's like to get an earned media win in the media. But I'm used to getting that in lifestyle and beauty, for example. This was the first time that we got triple stream of lifestyle media, celebrity media, beauty media, and music. So Rolling Stone wrote a headline about Cetaphil. Cetaphil! Like, people, this is so exciting.
You're forgetting sports media.
Oh, yes. I'm a girl. I'm sorry.
There was a football game.
I don't know what you're talking about, Paul. I'm here to sell skincare.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is because of the album dropping, that allowed us to actually do a proper teaser. Yeah. Right. So we got 2 real waves out of this, because if you're teasing, like you have your celebrity or your influencer go out like, "Hey, I've got big news I'm going to drop for you next Friday," or whatever. And the big news is I'm repping Cetaphil. That doesn't work. Right. It's that doesn't work. But if you drop, "I've got big news for you, check it back out," and it turns out you're actually announcing an album with Cetaphil, that works. Right? They don't feel hoodwinked. They don't feel, it's like, okay, yeah, that was real news. So it allowed us to really have a meaningful teaser window and then announcement.
I also think, Cetaphil being an iconic brand, we have the ability to place Easter eggs in our assets in a way that really speaks to our community in a clever way. So only if you're watching really closely will you pick up on it. And
if you know, you know.
If you know kind of thing. And I think one of the most clever things is that in the teaser, Lil Wayne posted something announcing, "Hey, something's coming. I'm not going to be at the big game, so I guess there's going to be a seat to fill." Okay. Like nobody like there was no tag to us or anything, but we were watching so closely to see if anybody got it on the back end. And someone did. Someone said, "Watch this be a Cetaphil ad." And I was like, "Oh yes, someone gets it." Yep. But we played with this and it worked. And also being true to your DNA. Like you asked about humor, for example. And it's crunch time when you build an asset like this with less than 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. That's wild, people. But we thought, okay, wait, so this is great. Sensitive, check. We know that up to 100% of the population from our clinical studies struggles with sensitive skin or sensitized skin, okay? So our brand is relevant anytime, all day. But what we didn't have is a tie to dermatology. For those of you that don't know, Galderma is the world's leading dermatology pure play company. And we recently went public last year. And so we are really fixated on dialing up our science and our dermatology messaging everywhere. And so it was really important to us. We asked ourselves, okay, where's the dermatology in all of this too? What if we added an Easter egg in the shape of a dermatologist in a if you know kind of way? And so we asked ourselves, who's the biggest Lil Wayne fan we know? and it was Dr. Munib Shah, the world's most followed dermatologist on social media, who's a good friend of the brand.
And he's posted videos of himself in the exam room with Lil Wayne songs running as the track in the background.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah.
So we picked up the phone to his agent and we said, "Hey, what is he doing next Monday?" He said he's seeing patients. He said,
"Cancel them."
If he could be in a Super Bowl ad with Lil Wayne, they were like, "Say less." so you see him. He's in the kiss cam scene off to the right.
Actually, is he in this
and he was so excited to be a part of it. And then he supported the campaign in his white coat. He shot lots of assets like in the background, BTS. So I think there's a way to be true to yourself and your DNA too.
Totally.
Excellent session, guys. Time for some questions. Yeah.
I feel like I lucked out in the front row. Hi, guys. Firstly, thank you so much for a great talk and great energy. I was laughing my cheeks out, which is always a good thing. So I'm Yasmin. I'm part of the Lego group and I work within the global social media strategy side. So it's lovely to see this come to life. If it's okay with you, I'm going to do a 2-part question in spirit of you guys smashing it 2 years in a row. First question is around talent, of course, because you got those timelines are so squeezed. Did you have a plan B if Lil Wayne said no? And then the second question, of course, you mentioned that you smashed out the park on TikTok. Lil Wayne is attracting more of that younger demographic. Did you have any kind of results of like reaching a new audience? And is that something exciting and something you want to tailwind for future campaigns?
Absolutely. So yes, we had a plan B, but we didn't like the plan B, to be honest. Like if we had to go in that direction, I'm sure it would have been awesome. But we knew we had that woo-woo instinct that this was it. We knew it. And we saw incredible results. The other thing that was really surprising when we were doing this evaluation was that up to 60% of Lil Wayne's following is Gen Z. Shocking as a mature millennial, right? Sounds better than old millennial.
Experienced millennial.
Thank you. Advanced millennial. Yes. But we saw 60% of his TikTok following is Gen Z. Mm-hmm. And, for people like me, maybe, who remember him as being like an iconic moment during my college years, there's a whole element of nostalgia that gains reverence within Gen Z. And so we had recently rebranded with Gen Z as our target design demographic. So that was perfect. And we saw us double down. We saw a huge lift in engagement, over 110% over what we were expecting in our internal KPIs. And we saw a lift in Gen Z following and engagement.
The other thing I would say is that typically when you do these campaigns, you run your data and you're looking at what's the overlap between sort of the talent's audience and the brand's audience, and you're actually looking for a strong overlap in many cases. There was very little overlap here, like almost zero. And so it was a big leap to say, is he really going to be sort of the ambassador for us to this audience? Where the audience is going to welcome the brand in, or is it just they're just too different? And we made the call that he's going to be the right ambassador, and it, I think, ended up being the right call. So
yeah, and again, because we had just rebranded to be design friendly for Gen Z, we're still on that journey to get that love from Gen Z. And the fact that 60% of his TikTok following was Gen Z didn't surprise us, right? That there was little overlap, but that was a big, desired population that we wanted to cast a net for.
Amazing. Looking forward to next year.
oh geez,
no pressure.
No pressure.
Any more questions?
That was great. And to echo your comments, great energy. Thank you. So this big swing paid off. Amazing. It's risky, right? Lil Wayne there's some controversy around him. You had to move very, very fast. How did you get that past legal teams and the C-suite and, all these people that kind of play by the rules and probably don't have your sense of ambition and risk? What was that like?
Ooh.
Well, one thing I would say is I think that because those conversations are always about both risk and benefit. And when we had the big, success story from last year, we had a lot of credibility stored now around the benefit side of us.
So that trust,
saying,
you banked a whole load of trust.
and
Yes.
saying it's going to work and it's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
And we're not saying there's no risk. We see the risk, we acknowledge the risk, but we think that the benefit outweighs it.
Absolutely. Just to echo what Paul said, last year the bet was a lower investment because there wasn't a celebrity involved, right? But we got over 6 billion earned impressions. Incredible. So our CEO was super pumped about this. But it also goes back to the kind of talent that our C-suite is looking for and what they desire in their brands, right? Everyone knows Cetaphil in JPAC, in North America in particular, increasingly in EMEAC. But I think to get it to that next level, the brand needed to become more relevant. That was part of the reason why they had approached me and why I came to the brand. So they desired initiatives like this already. So I was pushing on an open door a little bit, but to be fair, this year we did have to sell in the added spend of Lil Wayne. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of desire and hunger from our teams in North America and globally because they saw how we dominated headlines last year.
I would just add, I think maybe Tara's underselling herself a little bit here. Of last year, she really did the internal salesmanship job of this also, so that all the executives felt like they were part of that campaign. They were excited about it. They saw it like up front, and close. They weren't just getting a report later. And so you mentioned Galderma IPOing. Galderma was the biggest IPO in Europe last year. In the 1,000 word press release about when they IPO'd, they talked about that Super Bowl campaign. You think about that, this giant company, for them to talk about basically a viral video in their IPO press release, that tells you it had really reached every kind of level of corporate leadership. And that was the internal, generating enthusiasm for the work that's really what we were able to leverage in the following year.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. But I would also allow this to be an inspirational case study in the sense that you don't need a celebrity. You can just take a few swings from a creative standpoint and allow the results to eventually you will get a win and it will speak volumes to your C-suite. And I feel very fortunate. Also, you mentioned legal. As for those of you who make decisions on hiring, I would really encourage you to think about agility as well when you're hiring people in non-marketing positions as well. We are very fortunate at Galderma to have a best-in-class legal team that moves fast and moves at the speed of culture also. And not every company is like that. I think I speak for all of us that are nodding in empathy. Yes. So we have a best-in-class framework and infrastructure at Galderma, luckily for us.
We talked a lot about psychological safety yesterday, and that feels like building psychological safe cultures internally so that you can fail fast and you can learn and you can just figure stuff out. It feels like that is a culture that you have built. Is that true? How much of that kind of plays into doing things like this?
I think absolutely. So I think that Cetaphil is over 75 years old, and candidly, I did have to create a new framework of how the brand was going to operate to be frictionless and earned media first. It had been paid media first, which meant that a lot of ideas had gotten squashed over the years. Great ideas had been pushed out or deprioritized. So I did have to create a culture of, hey, does anybody got a great idea? And then let's do it. Let's greenlight it. Let's move fast. That is an internal culture to be a powerful greenlighter, essentially. And I think what that does is it boosts morale too. Because to be clear, I don't have an ego. I just want to win, essentially, as a team. And I don't care where the idea comes from. And I just want the world's best idea possible. But you do have to. Oftentimes we have the responsibility to create that internal culture, and I haven't really thought about it like that, but so thank you for asking the question. But the truth is, looking in hindsight, that is something that we've built.
Amazing. Give it up for Tara and Paul. Thank you so much.